Alright guys, so today in front of me we're going to be reviewing Middle West Spirits. So founded in 2008, Middle West Spirits is built upon 4 generations of distilling. They're based out of Columbus, Ohio. Owners Ryan Lang and Brady Konya look to build upon that same tradition. So today I have 3 different expressions in front of me. We have their straight wheated whiskey, we have their straight wheated bourbon whiskey, which is their Michelone Reserve, and we have their straight rye whiskey, which is their Dark Pumpernickel. Definitely excited to get into this review, guys. I've been a fan of Middle West Spirits for a while. Follow them on Instagram. I had to reach out to them and try to review some of their whiskey, guys. So without further ado, let's go. Alright guys, so we're going to go ahead and get started with their straight wheat whiskey. This one is aged for a minimum of 3 years, comes in at 92 proof, and is 100% Ohio soft red winter wheat. This one is actually batch number 68. Let's go ahead and get in the nose. Yeah, there's a lot of fruitiness coming from this one, but there's also like this really nice undertone of vanilla. I get this like this dried pear on the nose a little bit further into the glass. There's a good bit of brown sugar. It's like this brown sugar, vanilla, like I said, a little bit of some dried pear further into the glass. But I also pick up like it's like a cherry Danish. So you get like a little bit of that like wheat bread, but then there's like this nice like cherry Danish that's kind of tied into that. Really nice nose. So yeah, definitely a little fruity. Like I said, I mean, there's like maybe some dried pear, maybe that cherry Danish, a little bit of like wheat bread, nice kind of undertone of vanilla, some brown sugars there, a little bit into the further into the glass as well. Nice nose, guys. Let's get into the palate. Cheers. Yeah, so on this one, it really kind of it targets the entire palate on this one. Very, very mouth coating. First thing I get on the tip of the tongue is like this almond. It's almost kind of like an almond butter, some almond butter like sweetness there, kind of on the front of the palate. Definitely some nuttiness in there. And then, like as it kind of goes back, you don't necessarily pick up like the flavors from the wheat, but there's still a lot of that fruitiness that was on the nose. Is what's happening to my palate right now. It's just saturated with these just really nice fruity notes. Some of that pear kind of shines through. Like I said, some of that like the almond butter on the front, some pear on the middle of the palate, and into the back. It's not very spicy, but it's definitely silky. It leaves your mouth with that silky feel. Really nice first sip. Let's get a second one. So that sip changed a little bit. Do pick up on the back end. I notice it's like this like cinnamon clove mixture that goes from the middle of the palate and into the finish. But that cherry that I picked up on the nose is definitely present all across the middle of the palate. Again, front of the palate like almond butter, and the middle of the palate is that cherry. It's almost dominating almost everything right now, but I love it. It's absolutely delicious. And into the back, you get a little bit of that, maybe a little bit of that dried pear, and then there's like this cinnamon clove mixture that just kind of ties and mingles in together, and into the finish. Definitely very sweet. And something else that's different too is this is a 100% straight wheat whiskey, so you don't find that a lot out on the market. I mean, it's out there, but it's not out there like, 100% rye and all that. So definitely very, very interesting for a 100% rye in a good way. Let's get into the last sip, guys. Cheers. Yeah, so that last sip there, it stayed consistent with that second one. Like almond nuttiness, some almond butter there on the front of the palate. Middle of the palate is just cherry dominated. Then going into the back, again, you get this like cinnamon clove, a little bit of some like dried pear there as well, and it kind of just mingles into the finish. It's a short to medium finish, But this one kind of makes me want to keep going back for more. For being a 100% straight wheated whiskey, this is really good. I'm actually pretty impressed by this one. Again, like it does leave that like silky kind of feeling in your mouth, and it kind of, you know, that cherry note definitely saturates, you know, that mid palate, and then those spices like that clove and the cinnamon just kind of mingle in with that little bit of like dry pear and into the finish. I'm really impressed here with this straight wheat whiskey from Middle West Spirits. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and get into their straight wheat bourbon whiskey. This is their Michelone Reserve. Comes in at 95 proof. But what's different about this one, it's actually made up of a 4-grain mash bill. It's made up of sweet yellow corn, dark pumpernickel rye, 2-row malted barley, and Ohio soft red winter wheat. Let's go ahead and get into the nose on this one. Wow, so first thing I get was like this burst of like a red apple, but then there's this like ripe banana note that was kind of like right behind it. So like dark red fruit, first thing that I got there on the nose, further into the glass, and then the banana just kind of followed up right after that. There's some lemon, like a lemon bar, some honey, some rich dark honey that comes out of this one. That's a little bit further away from the glass. And then a little bit further into the glass too, I start to pick up this like slight maple syrup note. It's actually really nice. It is very sweet on the. It's sweet and then fruity on the nose. I absolutely love it though. It smells absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's like this red apple, banana. There's some burnt sugars in there, almost like this marshmallow sweetness. You pick up some of that like dark rich honey, some caramel. It almost has like this kind of like further away from the glass, it's like this Cracker Jack note. There's like this like caramel, vanilla sweetness, but then further into the glass, you're picking up this like red apple, ripe banana. Definitely a little bit of honey in there. This is a fantastic nose. I can nose this thing all day. Let's get into the palate. Cheers. That's good. Man, that is really good. So again, some of that fruitiness that was on the nose, it's on the palate as well, just a little bit different. So I do pick up some pear, first thing that I get, on the front and the middle of the palate. Again, this is like the same as that straight wheat whiskey. It's so silky on the palate, it kind of saturates. And into the finish is this just beautiful, just chocolate and vanilla note that just slowly kind of goes down. The finish on this one is actually a medium to long finish, more on the medium side, but the flavors are just sitting there, just saturating on the palate. Really nice first sip on this one. Let's get into the second one. Cheers. Wow. So this is one that just like kind of continues to evolve. So front of the palate is again some of that pear, some fruitiness. Middle of the palate, there's a little bit of honey, a little bit of cinnamon in there. I do pick up like a little hint of some rye spice, like the actual grain, which is nice because it like a little bit of that earthiness to it. And then there's this like vanilla chocolate note that just goes from the middle of the palate and into the finish. And like there's like butterscotch, this butterscotch sweetness too that kind of flows like down with it. Again, completely saturating the palate, nice and silky on the inside. Man, this is delicious. Very, very good. Last sip, guys. Cheers. Yeah. Yeah, it just again, that fruitiness, that pear up in the front there. I mean, just honey, the chocolate and vanilla that kind of flows through and into the back with some butterscotch sweetness. And then like there's like this hint, the very, very slight hint of like mint that goes down and into the finish. This chocolate, mint, vanilla, butterscotch. The flavors are all over the place on this one. This is a fantastic pour here. This it's again, like the flavors just kind of saturate, just like that the straight wheat whiskey did. It just saturates the palate. They could sit there and you kind of feel the tingle on your mid palate and the front of the palate. What I liked about it too was that it just kind of continuously evolved as well. You know, from that second, you know, first, second, and third sip, it just continued to like get these flavors. And again, it's a 4-grain, so you're going to start to pick up some of these differences. You know, I didn't get so much of that rye grain on the flavor, that earthiness on that last sip like I did the second one. But then, you know, another flavor kind of popped up. This is a fantastic pour. Big fan of this straight wheat bourbon whiskey. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and get into their straight rye whiskey. Now, this is their Dark Pumpernickel. It is aged for at least 3 years and comes in at 96 proof. Let's go ahead and get into the nose. Yeah, so first thing I get is definitely there's this nuttiness that comes to it, almost like that like an almond or like a walnut. And then you start to pick up some of that rye grain on there as well. That's a little bit further into the glass, a little further away from the glass, a little bit sweetness from like a vanilla, some caramels. And then further into it too, it's like this orange and like a little bit of clove there too on the nose, a little bit further into the glass. So some sweetness further away, you know, further in is you know, some clove, some spices, some rye spices. Yeah, definitely you know, a little nutty in there, like an almond or a walnut, a little bit of clove, some rye spices. And actually further away, there's like this, I don't know if it's like a fig or a date. There's like this this dark kind of fruit note that kind of appears there. Really, I mean, pretty nice nose on this one, guys. Let's get into the palate. Cheers. Yeah, so this one to me actually drinks hotter than its 96 proof. I mean, I'd say this is maybe like, almost drinks like the 105-ish range, but again, some of that rye spice you picked up on the nose, it actually is on the palate, on the front and the middle of the palate, kind of tingles the tongue a little bit. A lot of sweetness though. There's a little bit of honey there on the middle of the palate. Finish, I get this like black tea note, a little bit of earthiness there into the back. But again, you know, this one, just like the other two, it's very silky on the palate and kind of just those flavors just saturate on the tongue and the sides of my cheeks. I love that about this. About all three of these whiskeys. It's just very kind of saturating. You can just kind of sit there and those flavors kind of evolve on your palate. Really nice. Next sip, guys. So again, that sip, again, changed from the first one. There's like this, there's, you know, still a little bit of honey there. Some of that rye grain that you get. Again, silkiness just kind of saturating the palate. It's like there's this spice. I can't really identify what it is. Maybe some nutmeg, like the slightest hint of some dried leather there, kind of going down into the finish with like the black tea note. So the black tea note's like kind of in the mid palate and into the finish. Then there's like this maybe some nutmeg that kind of flows through with this hint of like dried leather there on the back end. So the flavors for me are really kind of, you know, on the back end on this one. Again, it is, you know, you do get some of that rye grain there on the front, but then, you know, the middle into the back of the palate is really kind of where this one shines through as far as the flavors. Again, that black tea, some spices, maybe some nutmeg with a little bit of dried leather in there, some honey. It's good. Damn good. Last sip, guys. Cheers. Yeah, so again, that changed a little bit more too. So now, like on the front of the palate, not only with the rye spices, I get like a darker fruit now that kind of evolves there on the front of the palate, a fig or a date, maybe a raisin. And then, yeah, middle of the palate, there's like this honey, and then that black tea is there on the middle. Black tea kind of flows through into the finish with a little bit of maybe some nutmeg, definitely some spices, some nutmeg. And then, again, it just saturates like the sides of my cheeks and then my tongue. I really like that about this one. And then that, you know, just that hint of that dry leather, again, with those baking spices that kind of flow down and into the finish. short to medium finish on this one. I would say maybe along the medium side. But again, just that silkiness is something that was very common with all three of these expressions. I absolutely love that about these, and just like how the flavors just continuously evolve. Again, big fan of this straight rye whiskey. I think it's absolutely again, mouth coating, silky, a lot of different flavors kind of going on and just continuously evolved. Good straight rye whiskey here from Middle West Spirits. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I want to send a big thank you over to the team at Middle West Spirits for supplying me with these bottles to review on the channel. Guys, do yourselves a favor. If you haven't tried anything from Middle West Spirits, I highly recommend you try any one of these three expressions. I know they have many more, and I can't wait to try some of those because I am a fan of all three of these. I think they're all great. They all just continuously evolved on the palate. They give you that silky mouthfeel, saturated my tongue and the sides of my cheeks. A lot of just different flavors that you would get again from a straight wheated whiskey, a straight rye whiskey, and then a 4-grain bourbon. I mean, just tons of flavors. Big fan of what Middle West Spirits is doing, guys. So if you're looking for more reviews like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. And until next time, guys, stay dusty.